Thank you so much, parents, for joining the webinar, and thank you to everyone in our school network that shared this for us. So by way of introduction, I'm Harry, and this is Joe. We're co-founders of the Degree Gap. So we run an educational consultancy company, but also a tutoring company. So run that throughout the day and the tutoring company at night. And we wanted to share some tips and tricks that we've learned from talking to parents over the last few years on what they struggle with and the ways that we can potentially help you there. So yeah, let's just jump straight into it. If I just get the Safari up. So we will have a live chat throughout. You can ask questions, but we're also going to have a Zoom at the end where there'll be a link provided. You can join that and ask us any questions that you might have. So
we aim to provide you as much knowledge on the course as possible today. But yeah, if you do have any questions, as Harry said, we're going to jump to another Zoom call at the end for a live question and answer.
Amazing. That should be all set up now. So yeah, as it says here, the whole point of today is supporting parents throughout the GCSE period. We're going to bring a lot of our insights that we've gathered over the last few years after speaking to the parents and provide hopefully some really good solutions for you. So let's just jump straight into it. So how we got here. So both Joe and I went to the same school, same primary and secondary school. And what I would class as wouldn't be academic naturals. We performed very good at school, but it was really with the steady discipline and the right tutor that we managed to raise our performance much higher than we was expected. So for instance, in GCSEs, I was predicted good grades, but I managed to get 18 grades above what my target was. I then went on to do very competitive A-levels and get accepted into the London School of Economics for straight econ. And Joe went to a leading London university too. So after that, we both kind of separated from there, went like the traditional path. I went into finance, Joe went into recruitment, but we returned to education after both getting tutoring throughout school and realizing the impact that it made. So now we both tutor independently, but we support students across the whole board from year 7 to year 13 and also university applications. So we've grown that team to over 80 tutors and we're growing bigger and bigger every day.
Absolutely. So a bit about what we do. So Harry's delved upon it already, but essentially our mission is to maximize educational potential and provide students with clear and structured support they deserve. When we were back in school, as Harry mentioned, we had tutoring, and we've been with tutors that are not as great, and then some tutors who are really, really good. And the difference is massive. And then obviously we've been tutors for many, many years as well, and supported many students in the way that all of our tutors do. Obviously, the way we work is personalised pairing. So every journey starts with a consultation call with the parent and the student. It tends to be myself. We then obviously tend to try and go beyond the grade. So pairing the students with the tutor that we think is the best fit, not only for the subject they're studying, but for all different other reasons as well. Our impact, so we have been award-winning GCSE and A-level specialists for 2 years running now, supporting hundreds of students currently on the platform. And Harry said that we're growing, which is amazing. And yeah, we look to bring on more and more tutors, support all different ranges of subjects, and yeah, support every student as best we can.
Yeah, I would say one of the unique things about the Degree Gap is that we work directly with schools. So you can see me at the top here doing a talk in London, and maybe potentially some of the parents on this call might even recognize this hall in London. So yeah, we go beyond just tutoring and we do the educational consultancy side too.
Exactly.
Perfect. There you go.
So regarding the common issues we hear, so as Harry mentioned as well, we do talk with parents day in, day out, and we have all different range of parents getting in contact with different needs. But here is a breakdown of probably the 5 most common issues and questions we get from parents. And this is essentially what we're going to cover today. So first one, is my son revising enough? Obviously, that can be son or daughter, but it's a very, very hard question to answer, and there's not really a right or wrong answer. But today we're going to go through revision methods and potentially a bit of how much as well. How can I tell if my daughter's revision is effective? Again, quite a difficult question to answer, but there are amazing revision techniques, and there are some techniques that students tend to go into and just do themselves, which aren't as effective, which we'll cover as well. What even counts as effective revision? Similar to the one above, and we will delve into that as well today. So lots of these you're probably relating to, and we will cover these hopefully as much detail as we can. My son is getting stressed and seems tired. How can I help? So that obviously relates to student burnout, which we heavily try to avoid and try to support people through if they are in that zone. So yeah, we'll go over how we can help that as well. And my daughter does not tell me how she is getting on. This is so key, and half the reason we've done the webinar is that students tend to come in from school, they go upstairs, they do whatever they want to do, and they don't really tell their parents exactly how they're getting on, the grades they're achieving. And we'd like to change that and build a better relationship between parents and the student. And today, hopefully, we'll cover how to do that.
Absolutely. Perfect. So I guess your role as a supportive parent, we start with this initial question. Have you done some revision? Why is this a bad question to ask? It triggers stress, especially for a lot of students who are revising maybe potentially too much, not too much, but maybe not in an effective way. It triggers that stress. And what do teenagers want to do? They want to go against that stress. So they may not revise just to go against you. So what we want to do is switch that to a question like, how's your plan going? After today, we'll build a revision timetable, we'll build an effective plan going forward, and then we can then adjust that as we get closer to the exam period. Obviously, for GCSEs, we're about 4 months away. The plan's going to change over time. You're going to need to adjust the potential revision timetable. So how can you support them with that? That's much more kind of not going against them, but helping to support them, which I think is really key.
Yeah, exactly that. So, a few helpful tips just to start us off. So, the first one is about talking to a child and possibly their teachers determining if there's any issues. So, as we mentioned, obviously, likely probably not to tell you, especially in depth, of exactly what's going on at school, whether it's issues or whether it's what they need help with. So, when it comes to parents' evening, please do take the time and the effort to talk to the teachers, whether it's head of year, their specific subject teachers, to actually determine what you can do to help and what the problems are. It's obviously the teachers do an amazing job, but obviously you at home as well can make a difference. So please do delve into anything they need help with. Give them room to focus. This is really key. So especially during exam season, technically it's already started. They're doing mocks. They're then going to have a break and then do their actual exams if they're in year 11. Other years differ, but please just give them room to focus. You know, we've been in that position. You've got a vast range of subjects to study. They don't want you constantly nagging them or giving them different things to do. Just let them be, let them get on with the effective revision that we're going to show you today. And please don't be pushy. And as Harry mentioned before about this, you know, things to ask, avoid giving them the have you done revision, move it over to let's create a plan to think about how you're going to revise. And third, randomly ask them revision questions throughout the day to consolidate knowledge. So it's quite good, you know, essentially you might be coming down for dinner in the evening. While you're having a talk just before you eat dinner or after dinner, just throw a couple of questions out there to what they've been up to, or even subject specific questions. So if you know, you might have a few biology, chemistry questions that you can just go over. Always look to consolidate knowledge and make it quite fun as well. If they don't know the answer, there's no pressure. They just know that, you know, you're always there to support them, and yeah, picking out pieces they might need to revise. So yeah.
Perfect. Amazing. So I'm going to go through the specification because I think that this is a really good place to start. So in the UK, we've got broadly 3 different types of examples. So we've got AQA, EdXL, or OCR. And your child is probably taking one of the 3 for all the subjects they're taking. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to RAG rate the specification. What RAG stands for is red, amber, and green. Green is I've nailed this. I can answer exam questions on this. The content is great, is really easy now. I've mastered that. Orange is, okay, I understand it. I might have understood it in the class, but maybe I might struggle with them longer questions or just applying it to exam style questions. The red is, I really don't understand this. So what's the point in this? It's to get out the tendency of revising stuff that you're really good at, right? I was quite good at maths. I wasn't very good at chemistry. I was probably the kind of person that would revise maths too much and chemistry too little, as you probably can expect. And you probably can see that in your child too, if they have a subject that they're better at. So yeah, just first thing to do is get that RAG rate out, get the specification out and work through it. And really even just know what specification you're doing. is the minimum starting point.
Exactly. So, as we mentioned, we're going to talk about some effective revision techniques, and this slide is probably one of the most important you're going to see today. So, students we see all the time are they what they do is tend to come home and they open a textbook and they just tend to read of the textbook and make some notes. These are passive recall methods, which we tell every single student and every parent that we meet to please try and move away from. So it's really easy to go home and just, as I say, open that textbook up, but we should be moving to active recall methods. So to quickly summarize this, passive recall methods include reading textbooks, highlighting notes, and summarizing. All quite effective techniques, but only if you want to hit that 10 to 20% on the Edgar Dale's kind of experience you can see on the right there, which is about reading and hearing things. So we want to reach the 7 to 90%, but and as best we can. So to do that, it's down to active recall methods, which obviously, as you can see on the right there, are about watching demonstrations, designing collaborative sessions, and all sorts of different things. But the main four ways we can do this is exam papers, flashcards, teaching others, and mind maps. So quickly breaking them down. Exam papers go without saying. It's about bringing up a past paper. It might be doing it to time and doing the whole thing. It might be doing singular questions. It's up to you. But exam papers are really key to actually test where you are at the moment and what grade you're working towards and what you don't know. Flashcards, they're in the top right-hand corner. Hopefully everyone knows what a flashcard is. You can use the Anki app for this or just make them yourself. One side you've got maybe a question or a fact and the other side has got the answer. They should be quick fire, and with Harry's RAG rate he mentioned before, you can quickly go through them and work out what you do and don't know, and can be used for all subjects. Teaching others, self-explanatory. We always say to everybody, you know a subject fully in detail when you can teach others. If you don't know as a parent biology very well, and your son or daughter can come down and teach you a particular topic in biology, and you then understand it, they know that topic fairly well. And then mind maps. So last of all, mind maps, fairly easy. You get a topic within chemistry, put it in the middle of the topic and arrow off every single thing you know about that topic. Go back to the textbook afterwards and then fill in the gaps and in another colour, and you'll realise as well what the gaps you're missing and what you should remember. So they're the four ways. I'm not saying to only fixate on the active recall methods. Try to combine them with the passive as well, and you will create that Edgar Dale's kind of experience. You'll replicate that and hopefully get up to the 70 to 90% of what you remember.
Perfect. That's absolutely great. I will just add the exam papers. If you're going to pick one of them for the active recall, because students always ask, well, or to me or Joe, well, what's the most effective way? Exam past papers are the most effective way because you can get that exam technique and also get that content in there. So that's great.
Absolutely. So developing on from that, you've obviously got the Pomodoro revision method, which is quite an interesting one. Not many people remember it this way, but it's quite easy to remember. So essentially, all you've got to do is pick a topic to revise. So pick a subject, narrow it down by picking a topic. Then set a 25-minute timer. When the timer rings, take a 5-minute break and then repeat the cycle 4 times, which is called a Pomodoro. Very effective and very good at helping you remember particular topics. So obviously, as you can see on the right there, it creates urgency so you don't procrastinate in the middle, you don't take breaks where you lose concentration and get distracted. It prevents burnout due to the breaks that you're having in the middle of the Pomodoros, and it improves memory because you're doing repeated focused chunks of revision. So really key. As I say, pick a topic, set a timer. When it rings, take a 5-minute break and repeat the cycle, and essentially that could be your revision for the evening done.
Amazing. That's absolutely great. This is just one other that's actually got mentioned by a tutor who scored consistent A stars and consistent A levels at A star, which is very impressive. So he mentioned the idea of the Lightner method. So it's very similar to the Anki app that Joe mentioned, where you focus essentially on the topics that you struggle with. So what you do here is you build 3 piles or boxes in this case. I like the boxes ideas. And what you do is you create flashcards, you work through them flashcards. If you don't understand it, that will go in the hard pile. Sometimes I get it medium, and if I really get it every time, I put in the easy. And then you go through the hard box more often than the easy box. So what does that do? That makes you focus again, going back to that idea of on the stuff that you don't understand, because it's so easy to just focus on that easy stuff. Oh, I've done so much revision today. I've done 3 hours. You just focus on easy stuff. You haven't made that that jump, and then you get to the exam and don't score as well as you want, because it's going to cover all the subjects, not just the ones that you want.
Exactly. So let's go on to a little bit about accountability. So essentially, a to-do list or a vision plan is very, very important. So a little bit of a data insight around this. Studies have found that spacing revision over several days improves long-term retention by 60% compared to cramming, which goes without saying. As we put there, even 20 minutes a day adds up far more than cramming 8 hours in one go. If you're sitting there currently right now as a parent or a student and you have exams this summer, you may think you may not need to start until March, April time before the exams. It's really key that you do start as soon as possible. This is where parents can really support students. You have to support them with this revision timetable and help them to stick to it. So we've got an example on the right there, but obviously that's just a very brief example. We can send you one of these. We've made one that's quite simplistic, but does have some tips on it as well that we can send you afterwards. But yeah, as I've said, so this is really, really important. The key things with a revision timetable is three parts. So you've got to color code them into, like Harry mentioned, the RAG rate. So color code them into easy topics, hard and medium. The second one is to definitely include breaks in there, whether that may be a hobby, football, netball, arts and crafts, something like that. Include your breaks in there so to avoid burnout. And the third part is to make sure you put the topic specific on there. So if you don't just put biology, then the topic, and then the type of revision as well. So it might be biology, cells and something else, and then underneath flashcards or past paper. Make it really specific, and then you get home, you don't spend any time at all thinking about what exactly I've got to do. You know it's all there, and you can get it done easily and
Yeah,
effectively.
that's such a good point because you spend 15 minutes just working out exactly what you want to do. So in this method, you can cut that period out. So that's absolutely great. Okay, the next one is using the mark scheme. I don't feel like students at GCSE level use the mark scheme enough. So examiners are in that mark scheme are telling you exactly for stuff like geography, for history, for English, exactly how to answer that question. You also added to this, you have an examiner's report that will get sent out, which will tell you for every year what students struggled with and what a perfect answer looks like. So the key thing here, especially for something like geography, is that you from that can work out what the examiners, the words that they kind of use. You can spot them patterns and then you can use them exact words in your answer. So you can imagine you're an examiner reading it. If you literally use exact same words from the mark scheme, they can't doubt you. You're going to get full marks. But if you start using language off the mark scheme, then it might be a question on it. We don't want to go through questions. We want to be certain. So I think that a tutor summarizes so well, really well, actually. Examiners reward the same keywords again and again, learn their language, and you'll earn their marks. I think that's so key. So just looking back at their mark schemes, we spoke about past papers being so key, but when you do them, don't just skim through them. Really take your time and look through that mark scheme, especially for them qualitative subjects.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're going to come on to burnout now. So sometimes when parents reach out to us, it's a concern about them not revising enough. And sometimes you might be sat there thinking, my daughter or son is getting really stressed out. So what I want to go through is how to spot burnout early and what them signs could be. So desperately wanting to take a nap, especially at the most inconvenient times. So it might be on the weekend and they're just physically exhausted from the amount of revision they're doing. Losing track over time. So I remember me in year 11, I would lose track. I might do 4 hours of revision. I'd look back and go, Harry, what did you actually do in that 4 hours? Okay. And that kind of comes on to my last point, which I think is a most key one, which is there's a more focus on completion rather than quality. I just used to think I need to do 2 hours a day because I need to hit this goal. But I didn't really think, oh, well, what am I going to revise? And yeah, what is the most effective revision methods? Focusing on them, what Joe mentioned, them active revision methods. So then past papers, flashcards. I might have just read the textbook and highlighted it, which is at 10 to 20%. So what's the solutions for this? Keep them hobbies. Lots of students that work with us have really good hobbies, rugby, football, hockey. They do it at really high levels. And I think that it's just great for them to have that mental break. Also, exercise increases neuroplasticity. So it actually supports you in your development in school too. So keep them. We don't give a fixed time period because it's all dependent, but keep them at least till Easter in a regular period. And if you need to adjust, then make that decision then. But going back to that kind of discussion you have with your kid, you can have that discussion and say, do we need to adjust the timetable now? Do you feel too much pressure? And then just building that structured plan. So making sure that I think the revision timetable helps you if you don't revise enough because it keeps you accountable. But if you're revising too much and get into that burnout period, it keeps you in a fixed period. You say, I can only revise till 9 p.m. and you don't go past that point. So I think that's key on both sides of the the kind of spectrum there.
Absolutely. And it's a fact that at least 1 in 5 students do experience burnout. So please do look out for it and keep in mind what we've said around how to deal with it if possible. And you could obviously always reach out to us as well. So, talking about mindset and motivation influenced by parents. So, this is essentially as well where you come in. All parents, we advise to be as supportive and motivational as possible through this period. So, as you can see there, students who view ability as developable are 47% more likely to improve their grades. It's all about having a growth mindset, using the mocks, using what you're doing in class. If you don't understand something, then it should be a case of wanting to learn it and develop upon it as opposed to thinking, I'm not going to deal with that. I don't want to deal with it, and therefore move on from it and move on to the easy things. So students usually say when topics feel hard, they assume they're bad at it. But those with a growth mindset interpret difficulty as a signal that they're stretching themselves and learning, which is really, really key as well in this period. So, when parents come into it, is to be specific when praising effort and strategy. So something like "I'm proud of how you've organised your notes," instead of something like "You're so clever." "You're so clever" might sound like a nice little comment there for your child, but essentially it could be more specific. Yeah, it can allow them to take the praise on, and it allows them to essentially do more of exactly what you're praising instead of just "you're so clever." So yeah, please do be as motivational as possible, and yeah, support their mindset as best you can.
Perfect.
And then digital discipline. I'm sure everybody has is currently dealing with this about phones, technology, Xbox, PS4, iPads. Everything comes into play here. So essentially, students actually check their phone 80 times per day on average. And you think that if your son or daughter isn't checking their phone at school, then that 80 times a day probably comes in the morning and potentially the evening at most. So essentially, we're trying to move away from that. Look, the technology will create distractions. I think that goes without saying. But if you can reduce phone notifications during study, exam in performance might increase by 6.4%. The average notification breaks focus for 23 minutes even if the student doesn't open the phone, which is an unbelievable stat, to be honest. As well as that, when you are studying, so obviously our biggest advice when you are studying is to leave the phone to the side, but potentially even in another room. Obviously, we don't want them to be completely closed off. If they're working with friends or things like, or anything like that, then obviously want them to have it there. There are great online things that can help. But when it comes to just pure distractions like social media, it doesn't help at all. The issue we've got a little bit with when it comes to leaving your phone just next to you is that it actually takes up a student's energy to not pick up the phone and still distracts them even though it's not on. So even though it's sitting next to you and it might light up every now and then, they know they're getting notifications and all they want to do is probably pick up their phone when they're doing exam paper or something like that. So please try to leave it elsewhere or even behind them so it's still in the same room. And then, yeah, as we've put there, create a tech off zone for short bursts. So, 45 minutes to an hour. And then when they've completed something, we do tend to also say don't go straight on the phone after revising. It might, we want to consolidate knowledge, and going to do exercise or taking a break is perfect to consolidate the knowledge when you've got it. Don't go on your phone because essentially it'd probably be like losing out on the knowledge that you've just picked up. So yeah, phones away.
Perfect. Yeah. I think that's an amazing stat. I was blown away that I heard 23 minutes. That's crazy.
Mm.
Perfect.
So using the mock exams, so this is quite an interesting point that obviously hopefully everyone's done is doing or has done mocks. So it's either November, I believe, or January or both, which is great. So they must be used as feedback loops, and what we mean by that is they have to be used in a good way. You cannot get your exam paper back and think, oh, these are the things I did badly, these are things I did well, and then look at your grade and think that's where I'm at. They have to be used in a lot of detail through all of the revision methods we've said today, especially RAG rating and picking out the exam, the words in the mark scheme. These are the type of things that you've got to be picking up on when it comes to the mock. So going through with your teachers, going through with potentially a tutor if you have one, is something worthwhile. So what you've got to do is set 1 to 2 targeted goals to improve your final grade. So if you've achieved a B in an exam paper and you're such and such marks off an A, look through that exam paper and work out exactly the topics and type of questions that you're not understanding and you need to develop. They're the exact type of things. So it's easy to just look at a mock paper, look at the grade, but you're not taking anything from it. If you look at the exact parts to it and break it down where you are failing, it might be maths, for example, is a classic case of the end of the paper. You have a look at the end of the paper and think, look at the types of questions that come up. If you can complete a few of them next time, your grade is going to increase. It's as simple as that. So after mocks, ask yourself, what's one thing I worked on, that worked, and what's one thing that would change for the next time? So it reframes failure as data. We're not saying everyone here is failing, and we're not saying that everyone's achieving A stars. I'm sure you're somewhere in between, but use mocks to your advantage.
Yeah, definitely. I will just add to this for the schools that are listening that we did actually make a mock feedback checklist. So if you'd like that, I think we distribute it to a lot of our network, but if you'd like that or some of the parents, then please just reach out to us and we can provide that. It's really useful, I think, for the point that Joe's mentioned about them feedback loops. Okay, now we're going to go on to the transition to A levels. Some people in the call might not be doing A levels. There's lots of different paths of GCSEs, apprenticeships, college, work, or A levels, but a lot of people will be taking A levels. So I just wanted to mention this point, which I think is really important. So A levels reward curiosity. What I generally find is I teach economics, and what I generally find is that students struggle because the A level economics requires you to get that A or A star. It requires you to take on a lot of extra reading. So I can only speak for economics, but you can start reading the Financial Times, you can start reading The Economist, The Independent, start building some real life knowledge around how the world works and how monetary policy works in Brazil compared to UK or whatever it might be. But it really differentiates you, especially for A levels, but also for GCSE in stuff like English and knowing the context of books, knowing the context of the poems. Great stuff. That's A star knowledge. So yeah, just a quick point on that. But yeah, especially for A levels, focusing on these kind of news reports and stuff like that, really important.
It can actually also really quickly on that point, it can actually really help you to also develop you not only develop your knowledge within, but help you understand things. So if you don't understand something like just like physics and maths and sciences, if you don't understand one part of the specification or within the textbooks, reading around the subjects can help develop that. You might not use it in the exam, you might not need to, but it can help you develop it. And then once it clicks, you're then obviously hopefully going to understand it and remember it.
Yeah, absolutely. And as the degree gap says, it's kind of that transition to getting a degree. And I feel like a really big part of that is that independent learning. So once you get to university, there's this next step where people struggle again because you're left to your own devices. You're given these really open-ended questions, and you've got to go and use these sources, which people struggle with because they're still stuck with that GCSE mindset of I don't need to do outside reading.
Exactly.
So I guess the last point that I would mention is just aligning tutoring with school learning. So I know that a lot of people in this call will be getting tutoring. I think the statistic is around just under 50% of students in London are getting tutoring. We are a tutoring company, so we've done this for a very long time. I would say the number one tip would be work to your school's pace. So the number one thing I think as a tutor covering economics is I want to work just behind what the teacher's working at. So say, for instance, they're just about to go through monetary policy. I want to be 1 week behind them. So that in that way, I can reinforce their learning. I don't want to be introducing a new topic because that's the role of the school to do generally. And it's my job to reinforce that learning. So this is an example of an economics plan that I got sent, which was really good. It got this for EdXL. So it's 4 themes, micro, you've got all the different themes there to vertically down, and you've got the whole time period top. That is the best example I got. So if you are going to get tutoring, I would see if you can get from the teacher or the head of year some kind of plan of what the teacher's working through. I think that'd be really effective, and it makes the tutoring that little bit more effective for the tutor too.
Yeah,
so, yeah, I think that's our last point. But yeah, we did use a lot of comments from our amazing tutors, our team of 80 tutors that's growing so quickly. So they added so many points. I mean, they got full A stars and A levels at A stars. So who better to ask than them? Our contact details are to the side if you would like to reach out to us. These are the consultation calls. So you can either book with Joe or book with me. We thought we'd leave them both open because the slots might get booked up quite quickly. But we are going to have a Zoom Q&A at the end. But yeah, I guess before that, we're going to jump into our special guest. So I've
Just
invited.
a really quick point, just quite we're quite there. If you're thinking about booking a meeting with either of us, just quickly, what that would involve is essentially we would just have a one-to-one call. We'd meet your son or daughter as well, hopefully, and then go through exactly what your needs are. It might not even be a case of needing tutoring at the moment. It might just be some general advice. We're happy to speak to any of you about any questions you may have. Yeah, and give you any recommendations that we can yeah possibly think about. So yeah, please do
Okay.
book a meeting with us free of
Yeah,
charge.
perfect. I will just say that this will be at the end too. After our special guest comes on, we'll have this. We'll do a quick conversation about this, and we'll leave this up for you, and then the Zoom Q&A. But yeah, I'd like to introduce our special guest for today, Matt. So Matt runs My GCSE Maths. He's a GCSE specialist, GCSE Maths specialist. He's a TikTok superstar. So he's got 20 million views over all of his social medias and 100,000 followers. He's going to provide some amazing GCSE math strategies. It is one of the two most important subjects, as you can imagine. And maths is so important because a lot of the A-level subjects need you to have maths to a certain level. So yeah, definitely going to have some great advice there. So I'm going to jump straight into that now. And we'll see you after it and talk a little bit more about this. Perfect. Thank you very much. And yeah, pass on to Matt.
See you on the Q&A. See you later.
Bye.
Hey everybody, thank you very much, Harry and Joe, for the introduction. As the guys said, my name is Matt and I'm the founder of My GCSE Maths. Now, Harry and Joe asked me to join the webinar today to give you guys a little bit more information on some of the ways that you can help your children prepare for GCSE Maths exams specifically. Now, Harry and Joe already gave a bunch of really good advice regarding general GCSE preparation advice and supporting your children. I was actually sitting here listening, thinking, God, there's so much here. So if you want to, rewatch it, I'm sure there'll be a recording of this session available. There was really so much good stuff there. So I'm going to start off by just coming up and sharing my screen. Hopefully everything goes to plan. There we go. Fantastic. So, like I say, welcome everybody. My name is Matt, and I'm going to speak to you a little bit about the best ways that you can support your children in their GCSE Maths exam preparation journey. So, first of all, a little bit of basic information about me. So, I tutored GCSE Maths for 7 years, and then actually started tutoring maths on social media, or teaching maths on social media, back in January of 2023. Since then, I've had the pleasure of helping over 100,000 students prepare for their GCSE maths exams. We've built a follower base of over 110,000 students at the moment, and I'm actually quite proud to say that the video lessons online have been watched over 20 million times already. And through that, it's become super clear to me the common pitfalls, the common kind of struggles that students have. And yeah, we're gonna address some of those today. So first of all, what is the kind of biggest challenge that students face when it comes to preparing for their GCSE maths? Well, actually, it's kind of a little bit of a mindset thing, which then leads to ineffective revision and ineffective exam preparation. By the way, if you have your kids in the house with you at the moment, I would really recommend running and grabbing them so that they can listen with you, because there's so much stuff here. There's so much stuff, and it's kind of good for them to hear. You could also show them the recording as well. So what's this kind of mindset challenge that students face? A lot of people hear that past papers are the best way to revise, and that is 100% true. In my opinion, and the opinion of many leading educators, including Harry and Joe, actually, past papers are the key. However, they're not all that students need to do and that your children need to do when preparing for exams. So what's the catch? Well, a lot of students think that as soon as they finish the content in school and they start doing those past papers, they should be picking up the marks. But what quite often happens is students finish covering this course content in school, go straight into past papers, and then really struggle to pick up the marks and don't get the grades that they're expecting. Loads of students are going through mocks right now. I know a lot of your children will be going through mocks. And it's something that we see a lot. We go straight from understanding the content in school or with tutors into past papers and past paper style practice, and students just don't pick up the marks that they deserve. Now, why is this? This is two things. Well, the first one is down here at the bottom. In reality, exam questions require new skills which are not learned when covering the content. So that's one of them. And that is what we're going to use past papers to address. But what is the other one? The other one is that there's a crucial memorization piece, which is often missing between learning the content and understanding the content and trying to develop those problem solving skills. Because the harsh reality is that even when you finish going through the content in school, quite often you don't actually have the content and all of the syllabus and all of the content or enough content fresh in the front of your mind to be able to apply to these problem solving situations. So, the thing to try to help your students with, and your children, I should say, students if you're a school teacher watching, and obviously your children if you're a parent listening, is developing the right approach and the right understanding, kind of the right framework to approach GCSE maths exam preparation through. We still have roughly 4 months until the first exam and about 5 months until we're finished with the whole thing. So this is really crunch time, but it is true that we also have enough time to make a huge, huge difference if we take the right approach. So, what is the right approach? Well, step number one, we want to understand the content. Now, this is what you're going to do in school, or what your children are going to do in school. But then outside of school, they can also work on by watching videos online. There are some fantastic videos online. I have a bunch of videos, over 1,000 videos. There's also some other fantastic creators. There's First Class Maths. There's the GCSE Maths Tutor on YouTube. It's not going to be quite as good, to be honest, as working with a school teacher or working with a private tutor, just because you don't have that one-to-one interaction, but still you can make huge progress with your understanding. The second thing then is memorizing the key information. And this is the crucial step which so many students miss, but also so many teachers, to be honest, don't appreciate. You really do need that point in the middle where you memorize the key information. Because without doing this, basically you try to go from understanding to problem solving without having made sure that all of that information is fresh in your mind. And that's why this memorization step is so crucial. What's the best way to memorize? Harry and Joe already mentioned it. Active recall. I'm not going to go through and explain it again, but in the context of GCSE maths, what does this look like? This looks like A, practicing with actual questions, but B, actually recalling the content using kind of a question and answer approach. And actually, the Degree Gap, Harry and Joe and I have partnered up to make a couple of really good resources specifically for this webinar. And the first one is actually kind of an active recall cheat sheet that you can use with your children. So I'm just going to come over to my other slide, hopefully, and there we go. You can see the resource here. The resource, I'm pretty sure somebody's going to drop it in the chat right about now. It's going to be a link to this document, and this is basically a sheet which you can print out. The first A4 side here is for foundation content, and the second side here is for higher content. And for higher students, you're going to need the formulas on the first page and also the second page, and the key facts on the first page and also the second page. But really, what is this? This is a set of questions which you parents can ask your children, and the corresponding answers, which ideally they are going to come back to you with. And what I would recommend doing, I'm trying to zoom in, there we go. What I would recommend doing is repeating this at regular intervals, and you can get through this whole thing in literally less than half an hour. I know it's kind of a thing. I know lots of parents, when they try to support their children with GCSE maths, run into the kind of challenge that, I know this happened to me all those many moons ago when I did my exams, that my parents didn't know the content, because I mean, some of you would have done GCSE maths for a very long time. Some of you more recently. Some of you would have called it O levels back in the day. But yeah, you won't know the content yourself. And that's why when Harry and I were brainstorming this parent quiz sheet, we made sure that all of the questions and all of the answers were written in a way where you as parents didn't actually need to have any of the maths knowledge required to understand what's going on. You can literally read the question exactly as it's worded there in the left-hand column, and your child hopefully will come back with exactly what is in the right-hand column, so you will know if they're right or not. So we're very careful to word these in the right way to kind of make it a quick and easy and simple active recall exercise that you guys can do with your children. So that's the first thing. How do we, or the first resource, I should say, of the two that we made. So yeah, that one is for memorizing the content. It's based on those golden principles of active recall that Harry and Joe mentioned. Now, the third step, the final step, my favorite step, a lot of people's favorite step, past papers, past papers, past papers. I cannot emphasize this enough. Problem solving is a specific skill which is separate to understanding just the math content itself, and it's also completely separate to this memorization process. You need the first two in order to do the third one. but it's a separate skill, it's a separate process. And this is where we see GCSE grades actually shoot up, is when students start revising using these past papers. Now, what is the best way to go through a past paper? You want to complete the paper, you want to mark the paper, and then you want to identify a couple of topics based on your findings, which you want to review and go through and kind of re-go through that understanding and memorization process with those topics. Now, the challenge when it comes to past papers, honestly, is that the process is really hard to track and monitor, and it's really hard to see if your child is actually kind of doing the past papers properly or watching videos on them. There's many different kind of challenges when it comes to revising with past papers. Even just the sheer process of managing, 20, 30, 40 past papers. And this is why the Degree Gap, Harry and Joe and I have teamed up to make this other resource. Now, guys, the first resource was good. This is really helpful. This is really good. But this second one is dear to my heart because it took us so long to make. I mean, Harry and I have literally been sitting for like at least, I think we've probably put at least over 20 hours into making this, a good few days, backing and forthing and brainstorming. What features do we want? What don't we want? What's going to help? How are we going to make this super usable? And this is the finished product that we have for you. So what is this? Again, this is a free resource, free handout. There should be a link going in the chat now. It's going to be easy to save and to use and all of that stuff. So we've basically built a past paper tracker, which is going to allow you as parents to have a really clear insight and understanding into how your child is getting on. And it's also going to gamify the process a little bit for them as well. So how does it work? Basically, what we've done is we've got all of the past papers down this left-hand column. We have the year of the papers, and then we have paper 1, 2, and 3, and then the total score. So each year there's 3 papers, and then the grade is determined by the overall mark. And what we can see basically is that to use this, all that you have to do is to input the mark that you got in a given paper, and then it's going to tell you the percentage, and it's also going to tell you the grade. So what we've gone and done is we've gone and kind of done all these formulas and stuff to input the grade boundaries for every single paper, and also along the bottom here you can see for every single exam board. So you want to make sure that if you're doing Edexcel Higher, you use this one. Edexcel Foundation, you use this one. They all look the same. AQA Higher, you use this one here, and AQA Foundation, this one down here. And what it does is it tells you, based on your mark, like I say, what percentage you got, and then what grade you got in that paper, and then you can input the date completed and 2 specific topics based on marking the paper for you to revise or for your child to revise. And what we see is that over here, we have our grades over time, and we have our percentages over time, and we also have the proportion of papers completed. And what this does is it turns GCSE maths exam preparation from kind of a really confusing and overwhelming process into something which is actually really straightforward and, to be honest, quite predictable. The beautiful thing about maths is that we have a list of topics, and once we know how to do the topics, we can go ahead and do the past papers, or even if we don't know how to do some of them. And what we see is that as we practice with more and more past papers, if we're doing them properly and with the process that I described and that Harry and Joe described, we just see the mark going up and up and up in quite a linear way. So just to show you, for example, if we were going to input another score, so you can see how it affects the graphs on the right-hand side here. Let's say for November 2022, paper 1, we wanted to input a mark that we did the paper. We could say, for example, in this paper, maybe we get 40 marks, and we hit enter, and the spreadsheet is going to go ahead and say that that was 50% because the marks are out of 80, and that we got a grade 6 for that based on the grade boundaries for that particular paper. And then we can go ahead and input the dates, and we can see that I've kind of done them in a nice date order over here just to make things simple. But if we go down, I'm going to change this January 1st. I'm going to click on it. Then I'm going to come over and I'm going to say, okay, let's pretend this was March the 15th. And we're going to see the grade go over there in the grades over time, and also in the percentages over time. Now, this kind of gamifies the process with your child. And if you want to really support them with their maths revision, the best thing you can do is to use this spreadsheet with them and say, look, this is kind of how it works. We're going to do the papers, we're going to mark them. Or you're going to do the papers, you're going to mark them. And then we're going to hopefully see, if we follow the process properly, our grades kind of go up and up in a relatively linear fashion. So we're going to hopefully go from maybe 20 marks in the first one to 22 in the next one to 24 in the next one. And before you know it, the grades are just going to kind of jump up in the way that we can see in this graph over here. So that is how to use this second resource. If you have any questions about it, let us know in the chat and somebody will definitely get back to you. And like I say, to find the papers, all that you're going to have to do is come over here and we've hyperlinked all of these. So for example, if you go over here, it's going to redirect you and it's going to take you a link to my website, mygcsemaths.com, which has a bunch of free resources. But specifically here, we have the 2024 June Paper 1 Edexcel Higher Tier paper and also mark scheme. So you could click on that and that's going to open up the paper. So yeah, that's how you can access them. Now, I'm going to come back over to the slides and I'm going to say, guys, that is pretty much everything from me. So to summarize what I've said, I know I've been going quickly. What's the right approach to help your child prepare for GCSE maths exams? Well, the first thing we want to do is we want to get them thinking about it with the right approach. Let's understand the content, then let's memorize the key information, then let's develop those problem-solving skills. To understand the content, the absolute best thing you can do, to be honest, is work with a one-to-one tutor. There's nothing which beats that realistically because the tutor can explain your child's, specific challenges. But equally, videos are fantastic. And also, I run live streams on a weekly basis on mygcsemaths.com. That could help as well as an alternative. But yeah, videos, tutors, live streams, whatever it might be. Next, memorize the key information. The best way to do this, active recall, active recall, active recall. You can use that sheet that Harry and Joe and I have made to know the right questions to ask your children. But then you can also get them or encourage them to be answering other questions. And then finally, developing those problem-solving skills by completing past papers in a systematic process where we complete the paper, we mark the paper, we identify 2 topics that we want to re-understand and relearn. And by filling in that sheet, I'm going to go back to it. It's been a pride and joy for the past, probably week we've been working on this to get this together. So yeah, absolutely use this tracker because it's going to make the whole process so much easier to understand. And Harry was so keen to kind of work together and make a really fantastic resource for people who joined the webinar this evening. And we thought, okay, what can we create for them that's going to actually really change the game? Because there's so much stuff out there. And we kind of arrived on that past paper tracker. So like I say, don't underestimate the power of that as a tool to help your children. And yeah, guys, that's everything from me. It's been a pleasure speaking with you this evening. If you have any questions, put them in the chat and we'll be able to get back to you. It's been a pleasure. I'm going to pass you back over to Harry and Joe now. Guys, bye for now. Good luck with everything. See you.
Thank you so much, Matt, for that really useful information about GCSE math strategies. We have spent such a long time, especially making that past paper tracker, which is really useful, especially at this point when you're going to start looking at past papers, tracking them accurately and seeing that graph go up over time is really useful. For the parents that are listening, that higher and foundation sheet is really useful for to look through the formulas and get that content down that Matt mentioned. So yeah, I think that rounds it up for the presentation today. We're going to have a live Q&A after if you've got any questions about our services or about this presentation that you'd like to ask. But I'm just going to go back to the screen. If you'd like to book a consultation call with either myself or Joe, we'd be more than happy to kind of provide you any services and any support that you might need in this tense period leading up to the GCSE exams. We've also got our contact details there. And yeah, just rounding it up, thank you so much for joining and thank you to all the schools that did support us with this. The support has been overwhelmingly great and we've just been so happy with how many people have turned up for the call today. So yeah, we'll jump over to the live Q&A now. If you've got any questions there, please join that. Thank you.
Look forward to it. Yeah, see you all later. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.